In point of fact, the golden hue of the chamber, which, if you'll pardon me, was painted on the Kyriakis mansion, could not be more dissimilar to the gloomy atmosphere that the home possessed. The mansion was illuminated by the illumination of the morning sun. Hands were tightly clenched around Xander Cook's body, and his knuckles were white. At that moment, he was sitting on the edge of the couch. In spite of the fact that he had previously been known for his bravado and his carefree demeanor, his typical swagger began to disappear when he was confronted with an almost imminent court date. When Sarah Horton entered her room, she emanated a sense of calm that was comparable to the first soft breath of spring. Xander was the subject of her attention as she paused at the doorway and observed him. Her countenance conveyed both concern and tenderness. Instead of the man who had initially piqued her curiosity, he appeared to be raw, vulnerable, and silently scared. He was the complete antithesis of the man. "Xander," Sarah whispered as she moved closer to him at a slow and steady pace. After being slightly taken aback by this, he abruptly whirled around to face her. The smile that he attempted to put on was unsuccessful. "Beautiful morning, my love. I really can't say that you walked in close to me." Sarah proceeded to sit on the arm of the couch and placed her hand on his shoulder in an effort to provide him with some measure of solace. "Since you are located 1,000,000 miles away from me, I am curious as to whether or not you are considering the day after tomorrow." An acidic chuckle came out of Xander's mouth. According to him, it's hard not to. The experience of standing in front of a judge and watching my life being dissected by her is not exactly what I would describe as a memorable one. As soon as the storm arrived, Sarah lay down next to him on the couch and remained there during the entire chat, keeping her hand on his shoulder. "Xander, let me assure you that you are not the only one suffering through this problem. Throughout the entirety of the experience, from the very beginning to the very end, I will be there to hold your hand." He laughed and shook his head, indicating that he was simultaneously deriding himself and resigning himself to himself. "Does it occur to you that you are too good for me? At this very moment, you need to be fleeing for the hills rather than remaining here to watch me completely disintegrate into ash." The expression on Sarah's face changed into a frown, and her emerald eyes sparkled as she made up her mind to say, "Don't you dare say that. As of right now, Xander, you have not committed any errors. They have a large physique, but in addition to that, you have demonstrated to me the aspect of you that possesses some degree of compassion and that fights for the people who are important to you. After making those choices, you are not the same man that you were before you made those choices." It was obvious that the rebuke was reflected on Xander's face as he turned his head away. "You are obligated to reveal that to the judge. As soon as they see a man with a rap sheet that is even longer than a cricket pitch, they will come to the conclusion that I do not merit another opportunity." When Sarah grabbed for his hand, she entwined her fingers with his at the same time. "After that, we are going to make sure that everyone sees you for actually being who you are. It is my intention to demonstrate to them the Xander Cook that I am familiar with, the individual who has been working hard to put his life back together. Is this a plan?" With a grunt, Xander sagged onto the couch and sat back in a reclining position. "Sarah, you should not believe that everything revolves around me. You will be impacted as well if I give in to this temptation. Simply considering the possibility of bringing you down in the muck is more than I can bear to take in." Sarah's jaw became even more clenched. "I'm not going anywhere, Xander," I said to him before leaving. "And when I was in the greatest need of your love and support, you were there for me. At this point, it is mine to provide assistance to you." Xander had the impression that the wall of self-doubt that he had constructed around himself was collapsed as a result of her nearly continual reassurance. However, he did not express gratitude, but instead squeezed her hand. "Are you familiar with Justin's voice?" The response that Sarah gave was that she was referring to Xander's cousin, who was his attorney at the time. After that, Xander gave a slight nod and responded, "Yeah. According to him, we have a chance, but it is not exactly a slam dunk on our end. There is evidence in the possession of the prosecution, and they are not scared to utilize it." With a hint of a nod, Sarah's thoughts began to wander. It is important that you concentrate on your character in this situation. You can demonstrate to the court that you are more than the mistakes you have made in the past by providing testimonials, letters of support, or anything else that demonstrates this. One of Xander's eyebrows was lifted. Who exactly is going to be the one to sit down and compose those letters? Is Victor a person? Could that be Maggie? There is no way that the homeless beggars of Salem would even spit on me if I were on fire. And caustic gaze was given to him by Sarah. Obviously, you are aware that this is not the case. Xander, you are not at a loss for support. There are individuals who are on your side. No doubt, Maggie will be of assistance. Moreover, after everything that you have done for Gwen, I am certain that Jack would feel the same way. I can say this without any doubt. The corners of Xander's mouth puckered into a smirk, and he smiled very slightly. Certainly, Jack has a chance of doing so. As she put it, I never imagined that I would find myself in a situation where I required his assistance. Exposure to risk in a nutshell. After they left, the smile vanished as soon as it had been, and it was replaced with a look of bewilderment on their face. While Xander was rubbing the back of his neck, he appeared to lose the customary self-assurance that he possessed. The only thing he managed to say was, "I don't know if I can do this, Sarah," and he hardly raised his voice above a whisper. "It's hard for me to say where I stand. The question is, what if I end up in jail or prison? What if?" By laying her palm on his cheek and inviting him to turn his face toward her, Sarah was able to calm him down. He decided to temporarily take a vow of silence as a result of this. "Xander, you have no idea how strong you are, but you are stronger than you probably believe you are. We are going to confront whatever challenges might come our way together, regardless of the circumstances. If you are going through this, you are not the only one." His life was saved by her, and she rescued him from the brink of hopelessness by the help of them. Even though it was a fragile thing, it was enough to cling to in spite of the fact that it was the first glimmer of hope that he had experienced in days. Are you aware of the fact that you are incredible? Those statements were spoken by him with a tone that was laden with feeling. A grin appeared on Sarah's face, and her eyes glowed with pleasure. And make sure that you do not overlook it. A congregation of those who are supportive. The remainder of the day was spent attempting to make contact with anyone who might be able to recommend Xander. Sarah was forceful after she described how much Xander had changed. She contacted Maggie and Jack, and she even contacted Chloe, who eventually consented to sign a letter after Sarah described how much Xander had changed. When Maggie arrived at the estate in the afternoon on that particular day, the atmosphere was filled with the warmth and enthusiasm that she exuded via her presence. As for you, Xander, despite the fact that you are responsible for making errors, you have compensated for them. Not only does the court need to hear about the man you used to be, but it also needs to hear about the man you are now. The comments that she made helped to calm Xander's frazzled nerves, and he stood a little bit more upright in response to them. Within a short period of time, the counsel that Maggie provided and the unwavering love that Sarah provided had instilled in him the belief that redemption was still possible for him. When the evening had just begun, as the sun began to set, Xander and Sarah found themselves in the living room by themselves once again. The sound of the fire crackling in the hearth provided the entire room with a warm glow that spread throughout the space. After what seemed like an eternity of stillness, Sarah finally broke it by saying, "The big day is tomorrow." A tiny nod was given by Xander, while he continued to stare intently at the flames. "I concur with you. It's not something I'm looking forward to be honest." During that time, Sarah, who was present with him, pushed her cheek against his shoulder, which provided him with some support. To tell you the truth, Xander, I am proud of you regardless of what the future has for you. It takes courage to face your past and cope with the consequences of your actions. In order to entice her to come in, he wrapped his arm around her and pulled her in closer. I would not have been able to accomplish it without you, Sarah. In the midst of everything that is happening, you are everything to me. As they sat together in the peace and quiet, the weight of the next day loomed over them, and they were aware of the power that each of them took from the other. Each of them was able to draw strength from the other, a ray of hope within the darkness. In addition, Sarah came to a halt at the base of the staircase, and due to the fact that they were getting ready to go to the upper floor, she turned around to look at Xander. I require a commitment from you on this matter. In response, he responded with anything, without pausing for a moment. I have no doubt that you are not going to give up on yourself, regardless of what you experience in the future. The fact that you have come this far does not mean that this is who you are. While he was holding her hand, Xander's grip was solid but gentle at the same time. You are the reason I will continue to fight, Sarah. I will always be your faithful friend. The feelings of love and pride that she felt filled her heart, and a grin formed on her face. The two of them climbed the stairs together, each of them prepared to face whatever difficulties the following day would offer. Because they were an unstoppable force that believed and knew that they would survive the storm because they had each other, regardless of how this situation turned out. When Sean Brady woke up, he found himself in a difficult situation. While he was seated in a corner booth at Brady's pub, nursing a cup of coffee that was just slightly warm, he was unable to shake the heavy feeling that had been carrying him down for several months. The suspension that he received from the Salem Police Department had not only been detrimental to his professional life, but it had also been detrimental to his sense of purpose. In the absence of his badge, Sean has been having a difficult time establishing himself, both in his work and personal life. He took a tour of the establishment. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly baked muffins and the murmur of peaceful conversation. Yet neither of these things did much to boost his upbeat disposition. He had been here for endless hours in the hopes of gaining some insight, but he never received any answers. As he was ready to leave, the door suddenly opened, and Jada Hunter strolled in. Her self-assured stride caught his eye, and he immediately turned his focus to her. She was quick to recognize Sean and made her way over to him, her face displaying a mixture of resolve and reluctance as she approached him. Jada greeted Sean with a morning as she entered the booth that was directly across from him. His greeting to her was Jada, and he was astonished but polite. "What brings you to this place?" After a brief moment of hesitation, she proceeded to go right to the point. "There is something that I need to discuss with you." The significance of anything. Sean's interest was piqued, and he raised an eyebrow in response. "What exactly is going on?" For a moment, Jada inhaled deeply. "It is time to bring you back to the force, as both Commissioner Hernandez and I have come to the conclusion after having a conversation with each other. It's an unexpected offer." He squinted, uncertain as to whether or not he had heard her correctly. "Are you hoping that I will return?" Jada gave a slight nod. "It is true. A lack of staff has been a problem for us, and to tell you the truth, Sean, we require someone with your level of experience and intuition. As a result of your absence from the squad, Salem has not been the same." It was as if a surge of electricity had struck Sean as she spoke. He had been struggling with feelings of shame and self-doubt for a number of months, becoming persuaded that his errors had rendered him unsuitable for the position. The fact that Jada had a contrary opinion was both unexpected and humiliating. Shaking his head and running his hand through his hair, Sean nervously responded, "I don't know. There are a few really significant errors that I've committed. I am no longer certain that I am the appropriate candidate for the position." With a tone that was authoritative but compassionate, Jada leaned forward. "Sean, no one is perfect. No one is perfect. What is important is the manner in which you proceed. Everyone is aware of the fact that you are an excellent law enforcement officer. It is true that no one is flawless, but that does not mean that you do not deserve a second chance. As Sean stared down at his coffee, he felt something stirring inside of him while she was speaking. He longed to be a member of the team, to experience the sense of camaraderie that came with wearing the badge, and to feel like he had a purpose in life. To what extent, however, was he prepared to return to that world? Having doubts and engaging in introspection, Sean was unable to contain his worries as the talk continued on for an extended period of time. Jada, I am grateful for what you are saying. Yet, what may happen if I make another mistake? But what if I find out that I'm no longer suited for this? She smiled at him in a way that was reassuring. Until you give it a shot, you won't know. Moreover, you won't be doing it by yourself. Your safety is our first priority, Sean. You are a member of the department you work in, which functions like a family system. There is no abandonment of our own. Those comments of hers touched a nerve. In his heart of hearts, Sean knew that she was correct. He had always placed a high emphasis on loyalty and teamwork. In spite of the fact that the department had become like a second home to him, he had allowed his worries to drive him away from staying there. There was a folder that Jada pulled out of her bag and slid on the table. She reached into her bag. What do you think about this? It's the papers you need to get reinstated. It has already been approved by the commissioner at this point. The only thing we want is your signature. With the weight of the decision crushing down on him, Sean stared at the folder like he was being crushed. He was aware that this was an opportunity for him to make amends and demonstrate that he was still capable of making a difference in the world. However, in order to take that step, he needed to have courage, and courage was something that he hadn't experienced in a very long time. A crucial moment in time. At precisely the moment when Sean was going to speak, the door to the tavern opened once more, and Belle entered. When she spotted Jada and Sean seated together, she froze in place, and a mixture of surprise and worry flashed across her face. Belle, Sean remarked as he stood up the moment. What are you doing in this location? In response, she said, I was looking for you, while her glance moved back and forth between Jada and him. What exactly is going on? There was also Jada, who rose up and gave Belle a courteous nod. Just now, I was having a conversation with Sean about returning to the job. We want him to come back. The expression on Belle's face became more gentle, and a little smile pulled at her lips. That is very encouraging news. Sean, this is undoubtedly the moment you've been looking forward to, isn't it? The decision was still weighing heavily on Sean's shoulders, and he paused before making a choice. I'm not sure, she said. What if I am unable to deal with it? What if? When Belle stepped closer to him, she interrupted him by saying, Stop. You're giving this too much thought. Despite the fact that you have always been your own harshest critic, Sean, you are a natural leader. You are required by the Force. You are needed in Salem. Following the combination of her words and Jada's words of encouragement, Sean was finally able to break through the wall of doubt that he had constructed around himself. An expression of thankfulness and determination could be seen in his eyes as he glanced at both of the women. It was then that he asked, You really think I can do this? A glance was shared between Jada and Belle before they both responded simultaneously. It is true. We are starting over. Sean took a few long breaths before picking up the folder and opening it completely. During the time that he was going through the paperwork, he experienced a wave of clarity. This was his opportunity to establish a new beginning, to restore his position in the world, and to once more make a difference in the world. Taking the pen that Jada had placed on the table, he signed his name with a flourish to show his appreciation. It was then that he handed the folder back to her and said, There. I'm in, she said. There was a clear expression of relaxation and contentment on Jada's face as she smiled. By the way, Detective Brady, you are back. Belle beamed as she drew Sean into a close hug, embracing her. She hushed, "I am so proud of you," when she spoke. Jada looked to Sean for the very last time as she was gathering her belongings and getting ready to pack up and depart. "You will begin on Monday. Have everything you need to get started right now." "I will," Sean said, his voice resonating with a newly discovered sense of resolve. The rebirth of a purpose. Following Jada's departure, Sean and Belle came back to their seats, and a sense of serenity began to settle over them. "Do you have a firm grasp on this?" Belle inquired in a soft voice. Sean gave a slight nod. "Indeed, for the very first time in a very long time, yes, I am certain." At the other end of the table, Belle extended her hand and grasped his hand in hers. "You are going to be simply wonderful, Sean. No question in my mind." During the time that they were sitting together, Sean had a rekindling of hope within him. The path that lay ahead of him would not be simple, but for the first time in a number of months, he had the overwhelming sense that he was moving in the right direction. Sean Brady had returned, and he was prepared to leave his imprint on Salem at the very least once more.